I am Larry Hoy, biker writer legend, and this is the First Chapter podcast where I introduce you to some great books and give you their first chapter. Let's get started. Oh, I got a special one for you today. Okay, so I was at the con last weekend, and Ellie Mack stopped by to say hi. She's a fan of the podcast and wanted to throw her book up here. Absolutely. Ellie, I'm looking forward to this. It is the book series, The Awakenings, book one of her Valkyrie's Curse series. Let's have a look-see on the back, shall we? All right. So the back of it, Ellie, I wish you'd have warned me about these names. Helena Elgeson is obsessed with Vikings and Norse mythology. Neither Helena nor her sister know that they're Freya's daughters, Valkyries, the shield maidens to Odin. When her obsession leads to a remote site at Roadskill and its two monolithic runestones, her destiny is awakened. When the team wages a battle between a cursed site and a psychopathic killer, the time is ticking closer to Ragnarok. Will her friends be able to save her before the Gilthalion sounds? Ellie, should have warned me. All right, let's see what I can do. All right, so we have a pretty healthy prologue on the book today. So instead of first chapter podcast, we're a prologue podcast. Anyway, the prologue, Gods and Glory. Honor is life, for with no honor, one may as well be dead. Loyalty is life. Without one's clan, one has no purpose. Death is life. One shall die as they have lived. Poetic Edda. Silently the ship slid over the water. The oars secured men at the ready. They awaited the signal. Silver moonlight danced over the surface of the sea. No one dared cough or even clear their throat, as all eyes were on Jorvik Thorskill, their leader. Olaf, Stephen, and Ursula glanced between themselves, nodding. They had fought together in battles, but this was the first in their homelands. They touched their swords to their chest and made with the family sign, mouthing silently together, united by birth, bound by blood. An insurgent had taken their lands, their women, and killed their king. Now it was time to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. The ship slowed as the V-shaped hull found soft sand. Jorvik gave the forward motion. Two men steadied the ship as the others slipped into the knee-deep surf, sloshing quietly forward. By stealth of the moonlight, they slipped through the secret door on the outer wall. Surprisingly, there were no guards stationed on either side. 16 men moved into the tunnels. There were no torches lit, nor there were any guardsmen. Once inside the village, the men spread out, killing the pale usurpers. Olaf and Stephen ran to their father's house, while Elera ran to the temple. His assignment was to get the key. Elera slew 2 men at the temple door. They were slow and unprepared for his assault. Elera saw a shadow move before the curtain. He took the sword from the hand of the second guard he killed, and now armed with 2 swords, he moved cautiously forward, his muscles tensed at the ready. Elera moved behind the altar and found the secret compartment where the key was kept. It was open, and the key was gone. I have to get the key! Out of the corner of his eye, Elera caught another movement. He moved to follow the thief. Swiftly, he thrust his sword forward, spun around, and thrust again with both swords this time, removing the thief's arm. The arm fell to the ground. The key dropped free. For a split second, his eyes followed the key, enough time for the man to raise his broad axe. But Elera was faster and thrust again. The sword found its mark and the enemy's chest. The owner slashed across the man's throat. Ivan Thorskill, Jorvik's younger brother, fell to his knees, blood flowing from his neck and his chest, spurting from the shoulder. Elera watched as if in slow motion. The full weight of his actions bore down with sudden clarity. This wasn't right. What was Ivan doing, taking the key, when I was given the task? He picked up the key, tucking it into his pouch. Elera slipped out of the back entrance to his father's house and tell his brothers what happened. He misunderstood the orders before and hoped to the gods he hadn't failed this time. Up ahead there was a loud clank. Alea darted back into the shadows, his heart pounding as he tried to work through the mishap. Jaws clenched, his chest heaving as he forced himself to take shallow breaths. He raised the swords to defend himself. Now was not the time to let fear take hold. Alea mentally scolded himself for not following orders, while at the same time he was certain he had heard correctly. He swallowed hard as the footsteps approached. Jorvik and two other men crossed the main green in front of the leader's tent. Jorvik was the heir to the throne at first, so Alea didn't think it was odd. However, the usurper, Pale King, stepped out to greet him, bending slightly in acknowledgement. Alea watched in silence, hidden in the shadow, as the usurper, King, handed Jorvik a pouch. He could only assume it was gold or precious stones. "My brother shall have your key shortly." Jorvik bowed his head slightly and tucked the pouch into his waistband. "For the key, you have your pitiful village back. My men have grown bored of your women." Jorvik tensed. "And my wife?" "She remains untouched, as requested." Jorvik sighed. "I wish to see her, to speak with her now." The usurper motioned, two fingers raised above his shoulder, and Jorvik's wife, Nessa, who was brought out, her hands bound in front of her. "Have they touched you?" Jorvik caressed her cheek. Jaw clenched, she jerked her head to the side, flipping the loose strand of hair that covered her face back. "If by touched you mean spat upon, beaten, and pissed on, yes, they have touched me. No one has taken me to bed, if that's all you're concerned with." He called one of the men closer. "Go see what keeps Ivan." Ella moved quickly back through the temple, the way he had come. If it was discovered that he killed Ivan on his own clansmen, his entire family would be destroyed. He ducked inside the tunnels. There were hidden rooms within the walls. He could get to a supply room and wait for his brothers. Mayhap they could advise him on what to do. He dared not light a torch for fear that it might alert any of Jorvik's men to his whereabouts. Feeling his way along the cold stone wall, he found the niche where their supply room was. He moved along the narrow wall until he bumped into barrels. There he crouched, waiting, praying to Odin for understanding and for mercy. He had no idea how much time had passed. It seemed an eternity. Ella had nearly convinced himself that the best thing he could do would give himself up to Jorvik, hand over the key, and confess his crimes, when he heard the voices of the tunnel, along with the amber grove torchlight. His hand was on the hilt of his sword, ready to fight with his eldest brother. Olaf came through the doorway. He let out a huge sigh. "Who else is with you, brother?" "Ella?" Olaf waved the torch in front of him to find out where Ella stood. "Aye, it's me." He stood perfectly still, nervously waiting to see who else would follow, when Stephen bumped into Olaf's back. "Off!" He stepped back a bit. "You big oaf! Why are you blocking the way? The barrel's heavy, now move your ass." Stephen set the barrel down as Olaf stepped aside, placing the torch onto the iron hanger on the wall. As it cast a light around the room, they saw Ella, covered in blood. The two men rushed to their brother. "We thought you were dead. Jorvik's in a rage. Ivan's been killed. 3 of our men are missing, including you." Olaf felt his brother searching for the wound, where his blood was coming from. "Where are you hurt?" "I'm not injured. The blood isn't mine." "Then you gave him a good fight, then." Stephen slapped him on the back. "I have trouble. Big trouble." He glanced into the doorway. "Are you alone, or will be others carrying supplies?" "We're alone, brother. What's the trouble?" Ellen raked his hand over his beard and took a last swig of wine from his wineskin. "I did what was instructed. I understood the order. I went straight to the temple and fetched the key. The gods were half asleep. And gave little fight. But I was too late. Somebody had already taken the key, and I saw movement, and I reacted without thinking." "I'm not seeing the trouble, Ella." "We heard the orders given. You were told to go to the temple and retrieve the key." "Well, then I'm very confused as to why." Ella's eyes flickered back and forth between his brothers. Stephen and Olaf exchanged knowing look between them, realizing this must be serious. Ella's eyes flickered back and forth. "Go on then, Olaf." His voice was long and slow and soft and low. I killed Ivan. I didn't know it was him until it was too late. He had the key, and it was taking it to Jorvik. I thought, mayhaps I misunderstood the instructions again. I'd gotten confused before. He stopped breathing heavy, his chest heaving as he raked his hand through his hair, turning nervously, looking towards the doorway. I was in the courtyard. I was going to cut across to find you and Father's house, and I saw Jorvik and the guards walking across the greens to the grand hall. He walked right up to the door, and the usurper came out. The usurper told him he protected his wife in exchange for a key. Ella licked his lips, his mouth having gone dry in disbelief. Then Jorvik added that Ivan would be bringing it shortly. He asked to see Nessa. She was brought out, but whole. She confirmed that she had not been touched. He gave Jorvik a pouch in payment, and when you set the guards to find Ivan, I came here hoping to catch you, that you'd be alone. His stomach lurched, not seeing any options. He'd be put to death for certain. Him, his brothers, and their families. Damn foolishness. Olaf's jaw clenched and his brows furrowed. He knew his brothers wouldn't lie. He also knew that Jorvik was not as honest. He had lied to his own father, the king, in front of all the men. He lied to Nessa, and he did not visit his Frelda, or mistress, in the next village to the west. He killed a clansman for raping a woman that he desired. Olaf also knew what he'd found upon return to his own home. His son left to care for the youngest children. His wife and eldest daughter were gone. Brenna and Igmir were not spared. They're dead. Olaf's son told him briefly of the brutalities inflicted upon them, how his wife had stood up to the men who raped their daughter. They beat her and made her watch as they ravaged Igmar, cut her face, and then slit Brenna's throat. Bjorn was left to clean up the mess and care for his younger siblings. Elsa was not spared. She was swollen with seed from one of her attackers, and she said there were many. I fear she's gone mad from it. She threatens to cut out the offending seed from her gut. She's hid from me at first, shamed by what they've done to her. I'll castrate every last one of those pale cur for it. Why then would Jorvik make a deal with this man? Let me see the key, Ella. Olaf reached towards his brother's, palm up. He took the key from his pouch and handed it over. Olaf looked at it carefully, tracing his finger over the markings as he read. By Odin's beard, the key to Niflheim? There's only one reason anyone would use that key. To sound the horn and raise the Valkyrie to do their bidding and start Ragnarok. Whoever summons the Valkyries, they will do the summoner's bidding and bring victory. Does the fool Jorvik not realize this? Stephen looked at the key. It was a round metal disc with a cut slot in the middle. Around the outside of the ring were runes. He took a piece of wood from an old barrel and broke off a small piece, and then buried the end of it. Carefully, he copied the runes onto the piece of the wall where it was larger and easier to read. Olaf grunted. Trouble indeed, Ella, but you have saved us all. Stephen stroked his beard as he read the runes. Suddenly, a puzzled look crossed his face, and he took the key to the torch to inspect it closer. Turning it in his hands, he motioned Olaf over. Look here. Stephen ran his fingers over a smaller ring of runes on the inside edge around the slot cut out. There are 2 keys, 2 doors that must be opened at the same time. He lifted his head, looking into Olaf's eyes for a minute. We must find the other key and hide them away. Aye, Olaf said in relief. This can't fall into this Dane usurper's hands, not that traitorous Jorvik. Elena, you hide here. Olaf moved the 2 barrels, revealing a wooden door leading down onto a lower tunnel. The tunnel led to a cavern on Svargel Cove, half a day's journey away. You'll wait at the other end for us in Svargel. We'll bring your supplies, brother, but you'll have to flee. It's best if Jorvik thinks you're dead or captured. When we have hidden the keys, we'll give the all clear and bring you home. Ella hung his head as a lone tear trailed down his cheek. He knew it was the only way, but he didn't want to be without his brothers. They embraced, slapping each other heartily. Ella took a torch, loaded a bag with many supplies as he could carry, and descended down the stone stairs. May the strength of the All-Father guide you, brother. Stephen placed his hand over his heart, making their family sign. Olaf did the same. Ella joined in, and they recited in unison, united by birth, bound by blood. The three nodded to each other. Ella closed the door over his head and disappeared. Ella made his way through the tunnels to the opening at Svargal Cove. There was a small chamber within the cave to the east of the main cavern where he stored his food and supplies. While he waited for his brothers, he fished, hunted small game, and carved 2 rune stones. On the first, he told the tale of betrayal using their keenings, the history of their village, the elders, the visitations of the gods, and the favors the gods bestowed upon them, were etched out in painstakingly in an effort to record the foul deeds, and the calm, the eternal fears that waged war in his mind every day. He told of their return to the village and a traitorous heir. On the second, he told of the key, but waited to hear from his brothers before adding the hiding place. Ella left space between and jumped down to tell the tale of Valkyrie babies left in their village to raise. Every 2 years, an infant child would be left at the altar stone near the easternmost wall. It was there that they left offerings for the gods. Baskets of rye, jars of honey, berries, and dried meats were laid out upon the stones as the solstice to keep their favor. Freya favored this village, and they worked diligently to keep that favor. Ella's mother prayed to be the next chosen to raise a Valkyrie infant, stating that it was her due reward for raising 3 warriors. She had been killed in the next battle, the child given to Ada Elkinson. As Ella walked along the shore, he would occasionally find pieces of amber, and took it as an omen from Odin. He tucked the bits into his pouch and continued to hunt for food. When he dug for shellfish along the shore, he found more bits of amber. Sometimes he would have more amber than shellfish. He carved himself a bowl from a fallen branch and then carved another to store his amber. 2 moon cycles passed, and Ella lay on his belly, hiding in the tall grass, waiting for the hare to spring his trap. His supplies were nearly gone, and he had little luck over the past few days catching fish or finding shellfish. His mind dreamed up possibilities as what could be keeping his brothers. Had they been killed? Were they found out? Were Jorvik's men on their way to kill him? Had his brothers been swayed by Jorvik's corruption, and he was exiled? Days turned to weeks, weeks into months. The pit in his stomach tightened. Perhaps he should go back and give himself up. In the solitude, he had given up hope of returning to their village, given up hope of taking a wife. Ella had given up the idea that he would ever be able to take the ritual of manhood. What point was there in even remaining? He considered the poison berries, and he hoped the gods would be merciful in his next life. A movement below caught his attention. A ship moved quietly across the water. He squinted, trying to determine if it was friend or foe. He had to move closer to get a good look. Ella made his way down the slope towards the water's edge, but he backed behind the undergrowth when he was hidden from sight. There were 6 men aboard. If it came to battle in his weakened condition, he'd be killed quickly. Better to fight another day, when he could fight bravely and at least win place in Valhalla. He watched as they neared. Realization dawned as he saw the shields with his family's emblem. Could it be them? After all these days! He remained hidden until Olaf slipped off the ship, and he slowly rose from his spot. True to the word, they brought him supplies. Jorvik rages. He's determined to recover the key. He searches everywhere, Olaf relayed. We've just come from Ireland raiding. We've hidden the key with Boulder Elkinson. He passed while we were out there, slipping peacefully in the night, with a smile of a fatal wound from battle. He was a good man. He'll be drinking mead in the great halls now. Stephen and I went to him after you fled and showed him the key. We risked everything by showing him, knowing how loyal he has been to King Asel. He's given us 2 books that the old king kept in the temple before his death. He had Builder secret them away. One of those books tells of an ancient war between the Aesir and the Vanir, which remains unresolved. In the end, with Helmgarth sounds, Ragnarok will begin, in order to get Gillim, where the helmsman's guards the Gilgorn. I swear this is written in English. You must pass through the gates of the Nephilim. The book has the locations of the gates. He clasped his hands on Ella's biceps, lowering his head to Ella's. Brother, you've saved us all from certain death. We built a smaller chamber behind this tomb, marking it with the symbol of the shield at Selvix. Jorvik nor the usurper will ever get their hands on it. The second key, however, is in Lisenfar. It's embedded into the grave marker. We'll raid the settlement and hide it from the world. Olaf was solemn. They had risked much to make their world safe at the loss of their friend and fellow warrior. Every day was risky to keep their secrets from Jorvik. These are dark times for all of us. Ella hung his head, saddened to hear the news. It wasn't safe for him to return. It might never be safe. Ella's heart sank. He'd make sure to finish the runestones before eating those berries. They shared a meal together before the group departed. Olaf promised to bring him a ship and slaves before the next full moon. Ella marked the days, counting each one while he worked diligently on finishing the second stone. Lightning flashed through the sky. Olaf had promised to return, but if he was in the storm, he may drown at sea. Their backup plan, in case he couldn't make it, Ella would traverse the tunnels back to the room just below the supply room. He transferred all his supplies from the smaller chamber into a nook into the larger cave to prevent it from being ruined by the heavy waves that crashed on the shore. He moved further inside the cave to escape the lightning and the howling winds. The air was electrified. Lightning flashed brightly, temporarily blinding Ella. The electricity in the air was supercharged by the lightning outside, swirled with energy as a ball of blue light formed within the cave itself. Suddenly, a zap of blue energy dispelled outward. A spherical wave exploded. One of the bolts that radiated outward struck Ella, piercing his chest. He fell to his knees as the darkness overtook him. All right, Ellie. You guys will have to forgive me on some of those names. They were tough. The prologue is awesome. I can't wait to get into the story proper. I don't have time to do it right now, but I'm going to be in on it. Thank you very much, and we'll be looking for you next. And I hope everybody joins me back here next week on First Chapter. So that was our first chapter, and I am Larry Hoy, Biker Rider Legend. I invite you, make sure that you reach out and subscribe to the channel. Befriend me on Facebook. Use this name up at the top, Larry Hoy Author. Drop in there. And of course, go visit Amazon and grab my latest book, Demon's Kiss. It's the latest in the Hit World book series, and it is an action adventure that you're not going to be able to put down. And if you're an author and you'd like to get your book out here on First Chapter, please reach out to me. Drop me a line and let me know what you've got to share. I'll talk at you next week. Later.